Well, hello, and good morning, good evening, good night, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining us here. My name is Matthias. I am the product manager here at Obsidian Control Systems and also for Elation Professional. Really excited to have you here. Say hello in the chat so we see where you're from. Always interesting from where in the world everybody joins us. Hope you all received the emails that I sent out yesterday for the training links for capture. Having the right version, 12.06, which we also put live yesterday. So maybe put a quick little note in there, make sure that we're all up to date here. If you've attended the previous webinars over the last few weeks, same rules apply. Anything in terms of questions specific to the topics we're talking about, put them in the Q&A. We'll try to answer them. I'll have some colleagues here with me that help me with that as well, which I'll introduce in a second. The chat's really like internal between the attendees. I'm not going to monitor it. So questions should you can use the chat also for if you have an issue, like a technical issue or like setting up your capture connection and something isn't working. We have a couple of guys that help me monitor this. But like questions specific to the Dylos webinar that we're going to do here, put them in the Q&A. I will monitor that and answer them as I can, or if it's where it's relevant. 2 of the webinars are already online from last week. Third one will go online today as well. This one is getting recorded, and we'll also add this to the downloads after I do a couple of edits. All right. Should briefly introduce my 2 colleagues that join me here today. A couple of times already you met Bob Mentally. He is joining me from snowy Wisconsin, probably.
Yes, snowing today and freezing rain. It's a beautiful day.
Yes, yeah, we just had a couple of inches of snow too. It'll be 0 degrees Fahrenheit, which translates to, Google says, minus 17 Celsius today outside. So nice and cold.
You are a true American, Matthias. You have to look up the conversion online.
Yes. There you go. And this is why we edit this afterwards. We cut this right out. My other colleague is a friend of mine from Berlin, Germany, and that is Christian. He is part of our development team. And he's joining me from Berlin. We actually went to university together a very, very long time ago. Hey, Christian.
Hello.
Christian is the lead developer for Dylos, so he agreed to join in here, help me with a couple of things where there may be specific questions that come up. He really knows absolutely everything about it. So he'll chime in here and there if some questions come up. Or if I'm talking nonsense, he'll help me with that too. So I hope everybody has their stuff up and running. You should be having your capture file up with Tony Stark in the center. You have an ONYX file that I sent. If you are not using that or haven't started with that, I would recommend that you close ONYX, restart it, and load that file in to make sure we have like a completely clean slate. I'm not going to go into the importing through capture. That was all covered in the previous webinar. Patching, I don't want to spend time on this here. We really want to focus on Dylos in this. All right, so let's start. What is Dylos? What does this word even mean, Dylos? Very strange. Well, Dylos actually has a meaning and is Dynamic Light Operating System. That's actually a term that Christian came up with originally and saw stuck, and we could never come up with something. We really like that synonym because that is really, it describes it quite well. It's a pixel composer, a composition engine. We do not call this a pixel mapper because you can, traditionally a pixel mapper is to control pixels on a stage. And a pixel could be an RGB, it could be an intensity. Here, this is a engine that can map any parameter. It is not about taking video or picture and just putting it on the stage over your pictures. This is actually, there's a lot of generative content in here. It's really a engine to compose and create and to you really design things rather than just playing something back and putting it on the stage or having like a text floating through your pixel strips. So there's just so much more to it that pixel mapper as a term really wouldn't do it justice. So yeah, much more advanced. It's really, if you follow this today, you're going to see this is actually a full-blown media server built natively into ONYX. So it isn't something that just sits on the side and you call up some box and it does something and it creates some pixel effects on your stage. It's completely integrated into the workflow. It'll operate no different than any other media server you patch, or how you maybe control a laser, or how you control a moving light. There's a lot of these elements are in there, and it functions really the same. It's very, very deeply integrated into the parameter control, into the timings, into playback control, overrides. Everything will work with Dylos. The beauty of it is that with very, very few channels, you have millions of things you can do with this. So the programming of it is actually really quite simple, considering the massive results you can actually create with this. As I said, it is not only color, and that's also why we really do not want to call it pixel mapper. It has, of course, it has control over colors, so you can animate RGB and CMY fixtures. You can interact with the intensity channels of fixtures. But you can also affect any other parameter that's there. You have position. You can use this to create movement effects, synchronize movement with intensities and zoom and focus and framing. And there's like any parameter that the fixture supports can be animated through the Dylos composer. It's actually even preset based. We're going to see at some point this allows multiple preset points to be utilized as you playing back content or use generators. So a lot of really fun stuff in there. So it's integral, really, really deeply, deeply integrated into ONYX. It is not a separate thing that you have to install. It is not an extra plugin. It is completely part of ONYX. It cannot run separately from ONYX. We really just use Dylos as a term to describe these effects that are driven through this engine, but it is really not something separate. It's just very, very deeply throughout the system. It's part of the 2D plan, it's part of a parameter control, and we really focused on making sure it's not something different than you control anything else. So if you know how to program ONYX, you're going to know how to program Dylos. And we did that, so you do not, it shouldn't be intimidating to use. We want to encourage people to really play with this, to be creative with it, and start programming much more visual than numbers and macros and effects that are based on just like maybe wave patterns and some offsets. It has a really different approach of working here. So yeah, parameters, queuing, timing, any of the playback controls, and even the effects engine that's currently in ONYX, you can actually use it to animate certain, actually all parameters of Dylos. I'm going to check real quick as I'm talking here if there's any questions coming in. Is the show file the same as today's training show file? I did send out an email yesterday that had everything in it. Did not everybody not receive that? Our webinar system told me it went out to 500 email addresses. So maybe somebody could confirm it. Yep, everybody got it. I'm going to put this really quick into the chat, so in case people don't have that. So give me a second here. Right. Because yeah, you're gonna require this file and the right capture file. But it's possible that some emails just don't go through or they get stuck in your spam folder. That happens. Wow, a lot of people said they got it, so that's good. Well, I'll put it up regardless really quick. This is a file folder that contains everything for the Dylos webinar. I just posted it in here, so in case somebody has issues there. You don't have to download the whole folder. You can also go into the folder and just download individual parts if you need to. So any questions on that, put that into the chat. Usually Bob helps out people with little setup issues in case there are questions. Anton here asked about the integration, if this also works with color wheel fixtures, and it does when you use the preset mapping, because then you can say go from that value on a DMX channel to this value. So this can be done with color wheels, it can be done with iris, shutter, like anything is actually possible. So where does Dylos work? What are the supported devices? It works with all ONYX branded controllers. That'd be the NX4, NX2, Wing, Touch, NX DMX, and of course also the ONYX key. When connected to a PC, it'll unlock the full Dylos capability and also 128 universes of DMX output. It works on PC systems. It has to be Windows 10 64-bit, has to be a multi-core processor, requires an SSD. Really, it's the specs given on the website for the PC version applied to Dylos as well. Of course, it'll operate better with a dedicated graphics card because Dylos is actually based on graphics technology. So the better the graphics are in your system, the better it will perform. I'm using external GPU actually on this system. But the NX4 and NX2 actually have internal graphics. It's 9th generation Intel or 8th generation Intel Core i5. And they're sufficient, actually. So I know most laptops actually do not have external graphics, and it actually runs out like a Dell, a newer Dell with a 10th gen 6-core processor. It works really well on that too. So while it gets more performance and has a better time rendering all these like previews and keep the frame rate up, it is not necessarily required, but it definitely helps. It also works on M-series, smart and M-series consoles that run the current ONYX 4.4 or will eventually be 4.6 operating system. So it will not work on older consoles that run 4.2 and below. So that'd be M1 and M2 Go's, the original ones. Their hardware is just not capable to work on that. M6 with upgrade kits will work. that is actually one big reason for that upgrade kit. We really wanted to get owners of M6s. That was the newest, one of the later consoles in the development at Martin. We wanted to make sure that these can be upgraded to really have the latest processor, motherboard, graphics, storage in there. And basically with that, it's a full ONYX console. It has a dedicated graphics card in it in that case, and it's licensed for 128 universes. So anybody else in M6, I'd really recommend you have a look at this upgrade kit, because you will not be able to upgrade further and utilize Dylos. And hopefully throughout this webinar, you see how much fun it actually is to use. Mickey asked here about the integrated graphics card. No, there's no problems with that. It will work just fine. As I said, NX2, NX4 do not use a dedicated card. They use the Intel Iris, I think, graphics are in there, and that works just fine. So, of course, if you show up with an old computer that's been upgraded from Windows 7 to 8 to 10, it'll very unlikely this will perform properly. You're gonna have a later generation multi-core system. Just follow the recommendations for ONYX PC, and you should have no problem with it. All right, let me close that out. Perfect. Licensing. So what do you actually get and how does this work? As you know, with ONYX, we have a licensing system based on a key or using a wing. The ONYX key is sort of the full PC license. In that case, you have 128 universes. Using NX Wing, you have 128 universes. Using an NX2, NX4, because of the bit of a limitation of the hardware in there, you get 64 universes, but it's still very impressive to get that much straight out of the console. A fully licensed system will give you 5 zones of Dylos. That may change in the future. There may be some additional zones possible as as Dylos expands and grows. We'll add layer capabilities over time. So this will change, but at the moment it is 5 zones as a max you can set up. If you're on the free version of the PC, so if it says free in the bottom left, which could be you have a ONYX DMX plugged in, you just use it for training with capture, you feed out some of the free universes over ArtNet or streaming ACN. With ONYX, you get universes 1, 2, 3, and 4 without any extra charge. In that case, Dylos is limited to 2 zones. You can place more zones to program and to pre-program a show. That's no problem. But you're going to get a watermark going through the zone periodically and randomly to make it basically unusable for live use. But it's totally appropriate for learning it and pre-programming shows at home. Content. One thing that was also very important for us when we launched this, we spent a long time curating a content package to make sure that you are ready to go, that we deliver you content that is optimized for this pixel engine that we have. So we spent a lot of time putting this together. It's about 1,000 files, I think. So you have a factory file that is provided on the website, same page where you download. You have a high quality version and a smaller version. It is usually recommended to use a high quality one. The compression there is designed in a way that blacks, for instance, are very accurate blacks, which is very important for pixel mapping. If you compress it too much, you're going to get artifacts. You get jaggedy edges. You may get some blacks that are not fully true black and a little gray. It's like watching a Netflix at a low resolution. So we do recommend using a high Q download. for the release. At the moment, I sent you a preview for this webinar. That's actually the small file. The release 4.6 will then include an updated content file where we're also going to add a couple of new things that are relative to some of the new features, like these palettes that we've been adding lately, and probably some content with some alpha channels as well, so which we're going to talk about in a minute. Question comes in here, input, spout or NDI. We have discussed a form of video input eventually, so that's on the planning to do. What exactly that will be is to be determined. We have done some tests with NDI, so we know how to tackle that. I don't know if we've done anything with spout yet, so I don't want to speak for our development team there. But it is planned to offer some sort of external input. So if you have a different server, like a Resolume or something, playing something, you would actually be able to feed that into Dylos and capture it and then remap it live. But that will not be in part of this release. May be part of the next release. We'll have to see how that comes together. So yeah, over 1,000 items, actually is probably, by the time we're done, we're maybe close to 1,200 for the next release. I hope everybody has that imported. That is really quite important for today's webinar, that you have that all in there. It is a separate package, because otherwise the installer would just get way too big. And you wouldn't have to, there's no reason to keep downloading this. Like every time we put a beta out, like every other week, there's no reason to download 10 gigabytes every time. The file doesn't change. That's why we separated it out. And if you update your versions, and there's a difference, if you uninstall your version, it'll also uninstall the content package. If you just upgrade your version from 12.05 to 12.06, 12.07, the content package will be still part of your installation. So the proper way to do this is just simply update it and let the software handle whatever it has to uninstall and upgrade to the next version. But we'll have a look at that in a second, how to deal with content and how to import the factory package and also import some custom content on your own. This content is specific to ONYX. It is somewhat encrypted and formatted in a way that it cannot be used with any other server, because we actually purchased the rights to that, so that content can't be used anywhere else. In case you wonder if you can import that into other media servers that you may be using, so that's not possible. And yeah, we really designed this specifically for Dylos, so it has the majority of things are really very specific to pixel mapping, and they may look really weird if you would play them back, but they're very they're the right kind of content to work with this pixel engine. All right, what's the workflow? The generic workflow, if you been through the other webinars, so you're familiar with ONYX, you most likely have experience with the 2D plan. And we utilize the 2D plan also to do a mapping of Dylos. So you have your fixtures. The first step is you position your fixtures on your plan. You lay them out to sort of replicate the look on your stage. It doesn't have to be super accurate. It is more to have a good representation, and sometimes actually better to be not accurate to the physical position. You may abstract this a bit to have more distance between certain fixture types, for example. Can you turn your presentation full screen and play a dual window? I'm not sure what that question is about. Bob, how do you see that coming in? It should just share that.
It looks fine to us. I don't know if this slide just looks a little odd to that user, but this is correct.
Yeah, this is a 16 by 9 screen that I'm sharing. Yeah.
Also, make sure that your window is large enough. Expand your window.
Okay.
If you're having issues, not you, users,
yeah.
If you're having issues seeing the full screen, make sure that your screen, your window of zoom is large enough.
Yeah, if you follow my mouse here, you should see that this is like a 16:9 full share. Okay. All right, sorry about you not seeing it fully. All right, so you position your fixtures. To work efficiently with the pixel system, you may abstract things. So you not necessarily be super accurate to what is on the stage. You may decide to group certain areas, floor fixtures, audience fixtures, something on the stage, something back sides, like whatever your show and your setup requires. And you may position that into different areas. You may group it together differently.
Matthias, I see what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Apparently, when somebody is talking, you or me, their picture, their image is coming up as well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it's not like displaying correctly that way.
I don't know. Yeah, okay. I think there's a setting on your screen where you can drag that over. Because I don't think I have control over that.
I think it might be per user because I'm seeing a lot of chats that some people are seeing it correctly. So if you're having issues, make sure that you're in full screen mode. That should help as well. So, but continue on.
All right, David, I know you may be in here, so maybe you have a quick note you can give us here in the chat. If there's a setting that I'm not having right here. All right, so you add your fixtures. The next thing you have to do is add the Dylos, what we call a zone. So a zone is to define an area that you want to interact with. And in that area, this canvas that you place here actually is where Dylos will work with your fixtures. That doesn't have to be all your fixtures. It could just be a sliver of it. It can be a certain area of it. So it really depends on the application. We'll look at that in a second. The next step is to add content or a generator or an image, whatever it is you want to work with. Select, once your content is in there, you'll select it and modify it, which is no different than programming any other fixture. You pick your gobo, you pick your rotation, your focus, your zoom, your coloring. The same workflow applies here when you interact with Dylos content or the Dylos generators. You store this as a queue, and then you play it back, which is really not any different than programming, let's say, a regular moving light on ONYX. And that was very important to us. We really did not want to generate something that completely operates different. All the parameter controls, all the commands, everything goes through the same process as anything else. In your test file, there's a screen view number 4 labeled Dylos. If you would click on that, you should actually have something similar to this, depending on your screen resolution. You'll have the way that is laid out. You have a zone selection area up here on the top left. This is where you work with the different zones that you have laid out here. You can pick content right from here. You can also pick it from the bottom. There's multiple ways to sort of access things here in Dylos. Next to the right, we position a 2D plan. You don't have to work that way. If you don't care to see that plan, no need to look at it. You could put it on an external monitor, for example, as well. Especially in the training, it's quite helpful to have it as a feedback. It's sort of like a preview screen for you to really see. And on the bottom, you have your content browser and your parameter access. And actually, the latest versions now have a lot of controls in this bottom area to give you a lot of like direct access buttons and sliders without having to dig into the traditionally more ONYX type of programming. So this is like an interesting hybrid. You can access it through the parameter sliders. We're going to see that when I go back to when I start sharing my actual PC here. Yeah. You will also find a library one here. We'll look at that as soon as we jump over and start bringing in some content. So I'll go over that. If somebody says you have to create his own, you should have loaded the ONYX file that is in that folder that I linked. If you haven't, close ONYX, restart it, and load that file to make sure you have a clean start here. So zone selection area, the 2D plan / preview, content browser and parameter access, and the parameter control down here. And actually, this is a picture from a previous version. A lot of things have been added here. So we've been quite busy. So let's have a look. I'm going to stop the sharing of this. Before I dive into that, I see a couple of questions keep coming up. So continue to put questions in the Q&A. Otherwise, I'll just keep on going here. So let's see how this will work. And Bob, maybe give me some quick feedback if this shares correctly.
It looks fine to me, but if anyone's having issues, I'll put them in the chat.
All right. I have a nice big 4K monitor. I tried to make it a little bit smaller. So this is the show file that I loaded in. We'll start up here. It is very, very basic. And this is actually a file you may have seen if you're on the Facebook and you follow our friend Giancarlo. I borrowed that from him. It's a file that he made and added a little guy here. We call him Tony. And this is actually very basic. It's 50 fixtures. We use the Proteus Maximus formulation here, which is a moving LED fixture with CMY. Because I don't want to get bogged down with a lot of details and a very complicated plot. This is really for you to understand the basics of this and the workflow and the concepts. And then you can adapt it to your own shows from there. So really try to get down to basics. So one wall of fixtures was a good way to work on this. So this is a capture presentation file that we made. Should look somewhat like that. If you don't see anything running, like if you start simply this queue down here, that queue should get you going. Yep, there you go. So try to be in this queue. So we're on the same page here. Let's start with content. And you find your content access here in the library. So this would be what it looks like if the factory content is already imported. You have the factory slot up here. You have no color images, monochrome video, color video, red, yellow, green. So we try to like group this a bit. Then you have a lot of gobos. This is actually the Elation gobo library. These are quite fun to use as masks and also to animate certain things. Then we have some videos from our friend Zyper and his great company Visions. They agreed to share this like nice library of things with us. If you don't have that, you should have a content file. And let's look together where to import this. So you would go to the little ONYX icon here, or you hit menu if you have a console. This will get you into our control menu. You go to load save here, settings on the bottom here. And here's where you can export and import your own user settings. And you can also import Dylos content here. So you have this guy here, import Dylos content. And then you would have to point at the library that you're using. So you should have a download of that. Let me actually see, mine is... So you should see something like this here, factory, HQ, small, large. So I'm going to do this real quick so you can just see what happens. So you select this. I'm taking this one, small, 10th of September. That's the one that was in the download as well. I open that. It's already all imported. It just rescans everything. It'll make sure that everything is there. And that was it. Since nothing was missing, it didn't have to import anything. Question here, when to use small versus large. Actually, the original idea of the small one was to provide it with people that are challenged on their laptops, don't have enough storage on there. Because, it takes 10, 12 gigabyte. If you're tight on space, you can use a 2 gig download. But if you have the space, use the high quality version. In this case, the small one actually has a couple of new files in it. So for this webinar, please use the small one. And you can actually switch back between them. And the release of 4.6 will contain a new, well, not new, but an enhanced library, a content package that will have a few more items in it. So imported it here. And this is what you should see. In your library, factory, you should have 13 folders. And this should be the result that you have here. First time you click on it, it may rebuild these thumbnails really quick. Once they're up and running, then they're all going to be there. So you see there's a lot of content here. And that's a good starting point. M1 HD, no, you can go with the large package. It's a 250 gig SSD in there, I believe, so plenty of space. On the consoles, there's definitely space for the large one. They all have enough storage. But that's a good question. Do we need to import into every show? You do not, actually. This factory content is, it'll stay. When you start a new show, it'll be there again. If you go between consoles, just make sure you have the same factory package in every device that you use. And then we do not actually carry this content in the show file to make sure the show files don't grow into like crazy big sizes every time you use a couple of these content pieces. So we assume that the content is actually on that console. So make sure if you go between devices that it's actually there. If you want to bring your own content, it's also very easy. You can go to what we call user content here. And in that download that I shared with you, there was a couple of files in there, these actually here. So I'm just going to delete this here really quick. Delete this folder. You can already see I use the same command line as you do in ONYX. To delete something, click delete, click on it, confirm it, and it's gone. So when I bring in my own content here, we're very forgiving on the kind of content you bring in. It really, it does a conversion, so it doesn't matter how great quality you provide. We actually optimize it for Dylos. It is drastically reduced in resolution. To work on this, the actual Processing of Dylos is 256 by 256 pixels. If you have some files ready, like the ones that so you have this one, video. You should have these 5 files here. So you could either bring them in one by one, so I can click on any file and just drag it wherever I like. So I place it here, and it imports it, it optimizes it, and it creates a thumbnail for you. I can take the next one, drag it here. You can pick any of these folders. If you want to rename a folder, you could right-click on it, rename folder. You can also click Edit and click the folder if you're on a console. And I'll just give it a name, webinar. Here's 2 files in there. I can also bring in an entire folder. So if I have this video folder here, I can just drag it on top of an existing folder name. It'll simply bring all the files in here. So I drag it here, and it brought everything in automatically. You didn't miss anything. There isn't really a super specific format. Any MPEGs and JPEGs, almost everything that exists in the market will import. H.264 encoded. So any sort of still format and video format. It is based on the FFmpeg playback decoder and encoder. So anything that will play in there will actually work here. I've yet to see really something that doesn't work here. Christian, maybe a quick question for you. Is there something definitely that will not import, a certain codec that is not supported?
Not that I know, but the bigger the files are, the longer it takes to import. But yeah, normally it converts everything.
Any recommendations when preparing content? What
yes, if you want to have it perfectly, then best to generate it for 256 by 256 pixels, so that there's no scaling applied.
Okay. And then compression, probably not so over compressed because you want to have accurate blacks.
Depends if you need alpha channel or if you. So something like lossless, like animation codec on QuickTime, for example, is lossless. This can help if you have, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've yet to see that something that doesn't import. I have a lot of stuff that doesn't play on my laptop, and it still imports and creates a thumbnail and works. So that's good. If you ever run across something that doesn't work, send it to us. There's also an upload link in the support page where you can upload files, and then you can email us at support@obsidiancontrol.com, and we could have a look why it didn't import and maybe make a recommendation how to provide it differently. So I brought in these files here. They're actually already in the file that if you loaded that ONYX file, they would actually already be in there. Same with, so there's no separation between video content and still images here. That can be in the same folder, and it's in part of the same structure. There's also some palettes that we imported, and palette is like a custom thing that we've been starting. So if you go to palette down here in your library, so you have like media, generator, text effect, and palettes. If you look at palettes, you should have these 4 files already in there. But I could bring them in the same way. So we provide maybe additional palettes one day and say, hey, you can import those in your show, and they're fun. I'm just going to do this here in the new folder. I just drag it in, and it places it here. And palettes are quite interesting. They're like single pixel images. So we'll show you how these work and how they're thought of. If you want to rename a folder, again, you click on it here, rename folder. You can rename your slots. It's like, so anything you want. Hello. Alpha, awesome. So you can give it anyone you want. I can't import files via drag and drop. That's an interesting question. Why not? I literally just bring it in here. You can also click on it. So drag and drop is one way. You can drag and drop an entire folder. You can also, I'm going to go back to these guys here. You can click on this with a right click. You get this. You can also hold edit and touch that cell on a desk. And then you say import content. And then you'll get the same. You get on the desks, you get a different looking browser, of course, because it's optimized for touch. But if I go to my webinar here, content, I'll have my videos here. And I'll say, okay, I want to see. Okay, I like this content. I'll bring it in. Here it is. So pretty straightforward. I have actually one here that's quite a lot of videos. I'll just show you how. So here's one, quite a bit. I just drag it in. And that's how quick it brings it all in. Let's see how that works. So it'll do its thing. You also see a little progress up here. It'll continue to work up there. So you bring your library in this library manager. I'm just going to wait for this to all fill up here. Question that came in. When you create a show, the user content number is a reference. Christian, I wasn't sure how we solved it. Is there a link to the actual file, or is it based on the slot position?
How do you mean?
Is when you create a queue, does it play? Does it reference folder 3 slot 2, or does it actually?
Yes.
There's a unique link.
So it's like a placeholder. So if you put a different video in, then it will be used instead for all links.
I remember
to
we had different discussions at some point. Of maybe like a unique string that points at it, but yeah, that's okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So yes, the answer.
No, it's meant that you can exchange the video afterwards, and it's replaced everywhere in the show where you need it.
Okay. Yeah. If you may have noticed, somebody said, well, I couldn't import anything because factory files are locked down. You cannot interact with that at all. You have to go to user, or you have to go to owner preset. Owner preset. The idea here is that it's let's say you have a rental system of ONYX that you want to rent out. You could have custom content that you may have purchased or that is like useful for the kind of shows, and you can actually lock that down with a key or the pin, and that is. It's been a while that I've done that. Christian, will you help me real quick? Where's the owner content here?
I think that was under tools.
Yeah, here it is. Tools, security. So I can add an owner. Role. I'm the boss. Don't know if it added me. There you go. Okay, so if I look here, should be able to drag something in here now. Yeah, so now that I have an owner set up, any interaction will ask me for a pin to make sure that you're not overriding something. So this way you can actually set up like a package for a rental, or maybe a club where you have another 500 clips that you purchase or import or whatever it is. And people can't override it. They can bring in user content, but they cannot interact with like the content you purchased for your place. That is sort of the idea of the owner content. All right, so let's see if all my content imported here. It did, perfect. So hide this guy here. So pretty straightforward. Can you change different colors for every folder? At this point, you cannot. There's no properties yet for it, but I think we may be able to add that eventually. So yeah, no, the answer is not at the moment, but it's a good suggestion to have that ability. So that was the first step. You need your content. Next step is your 2D plan. If you go to this large one here, since I imported this from Capture, if you go to Capture Front, this is actually the way this was created by the CITP import. And if you run this queue, this sort of should look like. We also did some optimizations recently in these betas that the orientation of the beams matches the capture orientation better. To add a zone to something like this, so two are already in here. So I'm gonna just, if you go to capture top, we're gonna add a new zone to this, just so you'd see the workflow of this. So what you wanna do, you wanna go into edit mode here. So you toggle this from live to edit. We wanna hide these options here on the side for now. You go to add, the little plus icon up here. And you have zone fixtures you can add. If it's a new show file and you never used Dylos on it before, it actually doesn't start in the background. It preserves some resources that way. You may have a show where you never need it. It'll there's no reason for it to be active. So in that case, Dylos will let you not run. You want to start a new zone fixture here. So you go to add, click it again, add zone fixture, new, and you say place. And this is no different than placing fixtures. Like if you do fixtures in a long line, so you do the same. You hold down, you define an area, and once you let go, it'll create it for you. It may take a second because it starts and sets up a bunch of stuff on the graphics card and the memory. And Christian knows a lot more about it than I do, but it does whatever it needs to do to prepare everything it actually automatically patches everything, so you don't have to worry about I have to patch 3 layers and 2 of this, and 1 framing layer and 1 background layer and 1 animation layer. None of this is needed. Sometimes it may take a while to start up, so have some patience. Once you have that and you want to adjust this, you can actually just simply click on these little arrows here and adjust the size of your map. So if you don't want to map all the fixtures, you can do this, for example. Once you're done, you close it. Now you have a third zone here. If you would go back to Dylos now, you actually see that you have a new zone here, ONYX zone, ONYX zone, ONYX zone. So that's not really helpful. Now you got 3 zones. I have no idea what each of these are. I got 1 here. I got 2 here. And actually you see it's 51, 52, and 53. So let's see, which one is this? 51, 52. So I need to label these. I actually put 2 on top of each other here just as to show some examples. We want to label these. You actually do it in the patch. There's no different than labeling any other fixture. So you go to patch. You're going to find your zones. You can actually highlight this. away here. So you just filter out the ONYX zones. You click on a name. So I got, say, front 1. Click here, front 2. And I call this top 1. If I exit this now, and I look at Dylos, here I got the names here now. Front 1, front 2, top 1. If you don't see fixtures on the Dylos on the plot, make sure you're in the right page here. So you have this demo file has 3 pages. You know, your show may have different ones. Once you create your own, but here's a top view and here are the 2 front views. And I'm using my mouse wheel here. If you're on the console, you can also use a 2-finger zoom. You can use this zoom slider to go to draw a box, or you can say zoom extends and it fits to the best way. Click here to cancel. There you go. Perfect. This uses the same 2D plan, no different. So now you're actually ready to go. You have your zone set up. In this case, 3 different ones. You should see this here: front 1, front 2, top 1. If you're not there, let's see what questions come in here. Is there a function to force the content to output to the zone proportional? So the way Dylos is currently set up, it is, Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, is not pixel accurate. You're not setting up an exact pixel space at the moment. You are setting up a region and it scales to that region. It is not intended to be, this mapping isn't like a video wall map where you position something very, very precisely. That may change over time and may add things in there to have something that's, if you write content that's exactly pixel per pixel, we'll be able to support that eventually. But at the moment, it does a lot of averaging. So if video content is playing back around this, it actually does some pretty smart math to make sure that that actually looks nice and that you get something that really replicates that the video is playing back there. Have I explained that well, Christian?
Yes, actually it uses the size of the fixture on the 2D plan and maps the region underneath it of the content, but this you can also adjust as a parameter for.
Are we planning to add like a pixel accurate way eventually? So if you made content that is exactly 2 pixels high and 100 pixels wide?
Yeah, we're thinking about different concepts, how to.
Yeah, but at the moment, that's not the case. It does a lot of averaging and scaling to sort of get the best result out. Okay. So that's actually it. You're kind of ready to go here at this point to interact with these fixtures. So if you have this queue running, let's see if there's any questions that come in. I see my fixtures are on the capture, but not on my 2D plan and ONYX. Yeah, I've been actually watching the chat, even though I probably shouldn't because it sidetracks me. Make sure you're in the right page here. If you loaded that, you're going to have at least this one here, so where it says capture front. Maybe you don't see this because your resolution is too small on your screen. So,
and also make sure your pages are turned on. That's another gotcha in the settings menu.
It should be on by default, actually.
Well, I'm just saying for some users. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you patch Dylos zones like you patch regular fixtures? You do not. You do not have to interact in the patch with Dylos at all, except for naming it and deleting it. If you add the zone, it does all that for you. And whatever else you may need in the future, because we don't want you to have to worry about, don't ever think about you have to patch something for Dylos. You add your zone, and we took care of everything in the background. The numbering, the names, how many of what you need. So right now it's 2 effects, maybe one day it'll be 10 effects. Like, we take care of that for you, which makes it very easy to set up. You don't have to, like, if you're familiar with media servers, you have to look in the menu. It's like, well, I need 3 layers, and the camera layer, and this layer, and that, and this setting. And like, we didn't want that. You add Dylos, we automated it for you, and we give you the best experience that way. Let's see to get something playing back on this and get this an idea. If you go to this Dylos view here, number 4, and simply bring up this intensity slider, you should see that your fixtures go out. Almost out. They're actually a dark green right now, because what it actually does at the moment, it maps. It closes the CMY on it, and we're going to see a setting to make this look a little bit better. So hope everybody has this control working here. You see this also matches here in the 2D plan. So your feedback here should be the same. Your capture should fade out. Well, let's just do something very simple. Just putting some content in here. You can do this by clicking here on source is one way to do that. And this will activate all this for you. You can also click here. There's another shortcut. So there's different ways of accessing this. I can go in here and click on a color image. I can also go in here. Like, if I'm selecting my zone, you get a little preview here as well. So if you have a full screen zone, 2D plan setup, you get this little icon here when you select the zone, and you can change your source media right from here. That's like, so this icon here with a little dot, you find that icon here and here, same thing. So I'm going to deselect this here. So I clicked on here, source. If you look what it does in the programmer, it actually selects the source. So it's like 3 values here. You have the type, library file. Normally, we don't have to worry about that. We try to make this very graphical, so you can sort of live in this for the most part, and operate a vast majority of the controls from here. You can also go to your channel visualizer, CV here. And you're able to see this, and this may be more familiar to you when you use like a media server with CITP thumbnails, for example. You have your folders, you get your content. You make this bigger here. So if you put in your files, you see all your content here. So there's like a lot of different ways to access your controls and to access and interact with parameters. So for now, we're going to focus on staying within this space, just so you don't get too confused. And then eventually, it really, you're going to find a way that works best for you. And it really is something I encourage everybody to have, to really take time and experiment to get comfortable with all. There's hundreds and hundreds of settings. So there's a lot of things that you can interact with. So I selected a source image, and then you can simply browse through it and see the result on my stage. So very simple. And you actually really see, so look at this preview on the right here. If I'm a lighting designer, I come to you and say, I'll show you a picture, and I said, I want this on my fixtures. To design that by hand, you would have to go to every light and start fanning around, setting the colors. This would be really, really complicated to do quickly. And then you're like, that's like too red. Can you adjust this? Can we try something different? It's 50 fixtures. So you would have to touch 50 fixtures right now to adjust all the different colors to do something to it. here, it's like one click and you can try different things like, oh, no, actually, this is prettier. And then we can go here. So just simply by selecting different kind of content, you can actually use Dylos as a way to have very interesting color presets with some gradients, for example. So actually, I have a piece of content that I brought in, or that I have here that I'm going to add to my library. And that is... Closed it. So I brought in some water and some leaves just so you have can see how this works. So the idea is, say you do a theater play and you want something that looks like leaves on your stage, and you can literally bring up leaves. This would take you a long time to create using colors, using presets, using some fanning. In this case, is actually literally a picture of leaves that I brought up. You see, it's kind of here, but it's very, very faint. And I'm going to show you a quick trick. If you want to use this as also a preview, and you may pre-program without a visualizer, for example, if you go back to your edit mode, I actually do this in 2D plan, so I have a bit more space. So if I select my picture here, go to edit, in the options, I have a transparency slider. And I can adjust how much of that I want to see. So I can turn that off completely. But I can also adjust this a little bit to see a bit more of my previews. So yeah. Now, if you crank it up all the way, you don't see your beams anymore. So find a happy medium. But it's a good way to have some preview of what you're doing here. So I brought leaves, that's one example. Then you have another scene, you say, I want to have some water. So instead of a third of the pictures in this blue, another third in that blue, and you try to randomize it, and you have to type in a lot of numbers, you could try with different types of water. So first of all, you just simply bring up an image and position it in your zone. And that will create this look here. You can see they all have slightly different coloration to them. You also see the idea. Then I have control over packages. The leaves and water images, now I downloaded them actually from a page, and I actually have that available for you here. Free content. On the forum, there is a Dylos section, and in Dylos you have free content links on the bottom. And I brought in a lot. We basically, some of these we used to for our factory content, but I literally went to something like this and I typed in leaves. And then you get leaf pictures, like this one. And this is literally how I do this. So it's fun to create your own library. So if you do like a play and it's a lot of fall colors, you bring that in. You bring pumpkins and leaves and things like that in. If you do something that has water images, you bring in water. And if you do something with a customer who has company logos and colors, you bring those in. So pretty simple to use. So then I have controls to adjust this. The transparency is here. So if I went to the 2D plan, selected the zone, and the transparency is, it's actually this here. Select this. The transparency is here as part of the, I have to make sure I select the right one. So transparency is here in this, in the options of the zone itself. All right, so put this back to where I was. So yeah, that's part of the setting up your zone. It's basically just a property of the zone itself, how much of this feedback you want. And that's quite handy. All right, so I have this here. Now I got a couple of controls. And that's, if you ever work with a media server, it'll be fairly straightforward. So I have intensity control. Oh, I have more than one thing selected, yeah. Yeah, so I had more than one item selected here. So I'll start again, clear that out. It's gone. I activate my zone. I click on my source. I bring up my water. There you go. Intensity control. I have contrast control. I can change my contrast around and inverse it. Often on pictures, if you go to the regular contrast that's there, it may be a bit bland, especially on CMY pictures. You're going to find that it maybe look washed out. Increasing the contrast usually helps, and reducing the brightness. So you just got to experiment with that. It's actually just like working in a photo editing system or After Effects or whatever you're familiar with. Then I can change colors, so I can say, well, I want less blue. So it's the colors on this would default to 100%. And then you can take out, like, oh, I got too much green. Not much red in here. You can change the saturation. You can invert it. So you can, now all of a sudden your water picture becomes fall pictures because now you have oranges. So don't take pictures too literally. Dylos has so many adjustments to create something. So here I'm inversing it. There's a lot of settings like that, and I really encourage people to experiment and try things out. So the next thing you can do, you can rotate the image. This way and this way. And just check out the result on the stage. It's already like a built-in effect, actually. If I reset that back, you can have continuous rotation, and it's going to go a bit crazy there for a second. If I set this back here to 0, let's say I just want to rotate this tilt angle here. I can go here to continuous speed and just simply animate that. So that's all I'm doing right now. I'm not playing a video. I literally took a water picture of the internet, put it on my Dylos zone. Now I can maybe rotate this a little bit. And now it's sideways. And you're going to notice here, friends, that it's not capturing everything. So I can also zoom into that or make it a bit bigger to make sure that it captures everything, has no dark spaces as it rotates. Yeah. I can reset that to 100% here. So this kind of stuff follows the same kind of controls. You have a lot of nice little previews here. You can just see also that there's no content here, so I can actually be able to color that differently in a second. You have a zoom level as well. You can zoom the actual picture in here. So lots of controls to so all this creates different, like these kind of things would be really, really difficult to write as an effect or chase, maybe impossible. If you want to reset something, it's just all got a bit busy. You can hold clear on the console and click one of those buttons. You can also right click on it and clear it out to defaults. So at any time, right click, clear, takes it out. Pretty simple. You like that? You just simply record it as a queue at this point. So like, okay, this looks great. I'm going to put this into my queue list here. So the first queue is the fixtures are white, and the next queue they're going to simply crossfade into that. And here's my Dylos queue running. I'll keep an eye on the Q&A here. Thank you for making it simple to create our own content. Well, you're very welcome. Thanks goes to the development team, who've done a really, really good job making this really painless. You don't have to create a very specific format. You just sort of drag it in and it just kind of takes care of it. How do you go to true black? We'll talk about mapping in a bit. That is actually, there's a special mode so that the fixture intensity is also utilized. So we'll look at that in a second. All right, so here's my content. Now I want to change it. So I'm just, okay, I want to go to leaves. So simply click over there. That's still your own custom content that we're running here. So I'll clear this out for a second. I'll go back to the first queue. So pretty straightforward using a simple image. Let's go back here, bring it up. Let's look at some of the images we have in here and just get some ideas what they're useful for. So we had this one earlier. It has different colors in there. So pretty interesting is to basically just take certain colors out. So the same image, gets you like very, very different looking effects. So, okay, I really like this. What can I do with this? Well, I could rotate it, for example. So one thing we did before was rotate the actual image one way. But I can also, like something like this is a great chase builder. So all I do is I rotate it like this. What do I do for that? I go to continuous. And here's my little chase going. I can go into this a bit more. You see, I'm using the distance here. Different ways to modify this. I like it. And you can always go click clear, because it's pretty easy to get into the weeds here. I can recolor an image, which is also quite interesting, using the palettes that we have in there. If you take a no color image like this one, doesn't really do much here. But now on top of an image, I can also assign a palette, and we have these like pre-made palettes in here. So in any image, you can actually quickly call up, and you can see the strip down here. That's actually the palette that is applied. I think Christian gave me this one here. It's another one to use. We will enable people building their own palettes eventually. So that's a fairly new feature. We're still working on that a little bit. But you can see how it takes basically a strip of pixels that is a gradient from dark blue to red, and then applies it to the source. So the source is actually, we go back to media down here. If I change it, so this black and white image gets recolored that way. Actually, even color images get recolored through this. So it gets me a lot of opportunity here. So that's all fun for clear that out. So I just right clicked here, or again, can use the clear button to take something out. So let's see what it does when you use a simple video. So if you go to color, number 13 here is a very basic, interesting looking color swirl going around here. Now that it's a moving image, you have some additional controls right away that are helpful. So let's look what we have here. So you have speed control. And actually with these last two beta versions, the speed control now blends. So previously, once you went below 1, it started to just show you every frame after frame. Now it has automatic frame blending been built in. So as you slow down, it stays really, really nice and smooth. So I can increase this to like crazy speed. Obviously, there's a limitation of the fixtures eventually. If it's CMY, if it's RGB, well, then you could do this if you feel like it. You have different kind of playback modes. You have play once, loop forever, go back and forth. There's a random one. You can activate them here. So there's like a bounce, for example. So it bounces back and forth. It kind of depends on the video. On some, it may not be so easy to see. Let me see if I find one that has like a directional thing in there. Yeah, here. So this goes back and forth. It'll play forward, and then at the end, bounces backwards. You have a random one that just randomly picks a picture out of that. That's interesting for these kind of videos. So if I take random, it's a quick way to build this like chases like that. So this is a symbol here, and then the speed is actually how many times per second you want this change. So like same as a beat per minute on a chase. And that's maybe you get an understanding here how we see Dylos as a way to generate effects like this that are, it's much easier to do visually like this, even for simple systems, you know, just 10 moving lights in a row, be a lot easier to utilize this than a normal effects engine, because you have graphical, you have so much more control, you can modify this easily. So yeah, lots of different options in here to play around with that. Your swing, it actually goes faster and slower. Let me find something that's not so crazy. So this actually will play it forward, it slows down at the end and then picks back up. It's like going on a swing, up and down and up and down. Actually, it's like a similar to, you know, as you'd put a sine wave in an effects engine normally. So it speeds up, and then at the end of the video, it slows down. Again, you always have speed control here. I hope everybody's following along there. Somebody asked here if this is only for color. No, we can put this in anything. We'll get to that in a second. So first of all, it was really to understand the control of the media and all the different options, and then we'll look at mapping. So I'm going to answer that in a bit. Yeah, your video files will loop automatically. Obviously, you want to create them in a way that loops seamless at the end. That depends on your content. So I can't really help with that. Pierre asks if you use a lead 2 or 3, if it's going to be accurate. Reasonably accurate, kind of not so depending on the fixture. It's no different than you calling up pre-made leaf filters from the color picker. You know, depends what the fixture can do. It's not, there's nothing calibrated here to a specific color space. If that makes sense. All right, so that's all pretty straightforward to manipulate here. So that's, then you have effects that you can apply to that. Let's see real quick. So intensity control tasks, we looked at positioning. You know, you can shift it around. If X, Y, and Z positioning here, if you just want to play this on part of the rig. Go back to the center here. You can size it, make it skinny. It's also possible, go back to 100% here. Oh, on the playback, so if I go to a loop, you can actually determine the, let me go back to speed. You have the control of the frame length here, so you can say first frame and last frame. So this also allows you to do very, very short loops. So now I restricted the playback. So that's another setting you have. Very similar to a media server. You have an in point and an out point. So go back, let it be. This will be the full video. So it allows you to actually pick a specific part of the image that you want to loop. think there's a playback mode to just pick a specific image as well, still. So you can also go still as a playback, and then you have what's called a playhead position here. You just go to whatever you want. You can actually utilize this as a still. So all these like moving content, you don't have to, it doesn't have to move. You could also actually animate this. So this can be part of an effect from the ONYX engine. So playhead is selected here. I can actually animate that playhead. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking this video and I'm scrubbing backwards and forwards. And that scrubbing is done by the Dylos, by the ONYX effect engine, animating this position here. I thought I would try that, but it doesn't. Yeah, so this playhead position has just a little sine wave on it now. So anything that works here, you can create all these funky looking things. Clears that. So just as I can manually adjust this, the ONYX effects engine actually is part of that. So what else have we looked at? Zoom. Yeah, playhead position. We're gonna look at some blending ideas in a second. So pretty straightforward on the media playback. Clear all this out. Dylos has an effect in there for text. So same, we'll set this up. We'll go text. And there's nothing in here by default. You can create one here. Again, import a text file. So I'm just going to create something really quick. This is my webinar. I'll put it in owner. See, so I tried to put it in the owner, and it complained that it can't do it because we'll do this here really quick. This is my webinar. So obviously you're not going to be able to really read this on moving lights like this. If it would be a pixel wall, but you can use it as a quick way to animate fixtures if you want to. But just pay attention to this one for now. I'm just going to hide this for a second. So you have control of the size of the content. You can control which way it's placed. So I can go back and forth. I'll come back. You can swing it back and forth like this too. You have a control of the direction. You can randomly pick out different positions of the text. And then if you use this little arrow here, you can actually change the fonts. It has a certain amount of fonts that we deliver with it. So I go to this, looks great. Can change the text size. Underline it. Typical sort of text editing things here. If I look here real quick. Yeah, so it's different. If you have multiple lines of text, you can actually decide which line you want to see. So you can also scroll actually in different directions. So if you want the Star Wars looking thing, let's see, vertical, horizontal. Maybe I'm too big to see this. I'm missing something here, Christian. The scroll speed of this on the text effect. Oh, there it is.
Scroll speed is just like video speed.
Yeah.
Same parameter.
That's why it's on random. There you go. Now we get started. So my playback mode was set to random. That's why this wasn't working. So here's my little Star Wars look. I actually can tilt it a little bit too. There you go. So that's part of the text effects. You can bring in your own text files in here. You import text files, and I would point at that's just a simple TXT. Yeah, can be fun to, I don't know, put in people's names or some lottery, whatever it is. So you can bring your own text in here. Yeah, see if you want to work on that. Let me see if that works for you. Otherwise, I'll move on here. I'll clear that out. Go back to my source. I'll look at text. Another source is what we call a generator. So if you look at factory generators, we put some fun stuff in here. One of these guys here. So a very simple crossfade. Now I'm going to bring my capture back. Here it is. So I'm going to play this guy. So if I select this one here, this is a color. This is generated content in this case. This is not a video file. And now I have a lot of different ways to control this. And you're going to see actually on some of these now, you're going to find this little selection icon. So you can scroll through these like this. But you can also bring up this little selection here and interact with that right away here. So you can adjust all that, make it a little slower. So this is just cross-fading through here right now. I could color it very basically, just as I do. So that's one way to color this chase. If I'd like to have a multicolor one, then these palettes come in really handy. So right now, this is black and white. If I select this guy, now I start getting this like really, really nice rainbow effect very quickly out of this. And remind me, Christian, is this release still going to have some like editor for this in there?
Yes, we're working on it.
Yeah. And is it possible to make your own palettes for a user?
Yeah, that's the idea behind it.
So that editor would do that. How about external? Like what format is this?
You can just import any still image.
Okay.
So if you want to have it perfect, it's 256 by 1 pixel high.
Okay.
But you can also use any other image, just averages then over the height.
Okay. Because this file that you gave me was DDS, so that's like a DirectX texture, right?
Yeah, this I used because I wanted to have alpha channel in it. But PNG is also supporting alpha channel.
So if I bring in a palette in here, my own, this would actually work. Like something like this. Oh, did a lot of them. Well, let's see how these are. Oh, look at that. So I took some of these images and brought them just over here. Let's see how these apply. So palettes down here. And yeah, that's that image that I imported. And here's my water image. Yeah, that's great. So what the palette feature actually does, it recolors this. And you have some controls on how this works. But let's look at the actual generator controls first and how that is conceptualized. Depending on which generator you choose, you're going to have some additional effects here, and you have some curves. So right now this goes up and falls down. So it's like a hot, goes to black, and then starts at a full white, fades back down, starts at a full white. You can actually see this here in the preview really well. So I could change my curve here and make this a bit smoother, so that fall off is different. So I got like a peak that goes through. So it goes up, peaks, and goes back down. I can change how smooth that is with different kind of curves. Then I can adjust how often this should repeat. So I have like and this is depending on the generators will be different. So you really have to start to understanding that. Here somebody says, I have no generator files. Close ONYX and reload that show file. I'll just hit continue show and then you have it. That is a known quirk in this beta version. When you load a show file in, sometimes these generator thumbnails don't get they actually don't get generated. So once you reload it, it should be back. So you can adjust your repetition here. So you can also make this really long. You have speed control, same. That playback speed is like always the same. And you see if I made that really long, it's like an effect that is really spread out over the pictures. So the nice thing here is that you can control these effects like really visually over the pictures. And then you can experiment how the different curves look to you. So the higher you go, the smoother this goes, and it fills in the entire space here. I will look at those in a second. So that's like, then of course you can rotate the source. Like you could rotate the actual effect, and then it goes 90 degrees. So if you want this to go up and down, and that's something where it gets really different than using a regular effects engine that depends on selection order, for example. In this case, you say, well, I'd really like this to look diagonal. And you can actually even animate this. So you can also rotate this over time. So it fades and it rotates around at the same time. So lots of fun stuff. So we got a different one. I can simply change my the source, the type of generator, and make something that's based on a center position. So now I got this pulsing, like this slower, so you can really see this. It's a really, really nice effect. So it comes from the center out and fades to the outside. And then just as it's finished here, the center comes back in. And then you have the same controls again. You can, well, rotating won't do much on the center one. You can control how often this repeats. You can change the curve. So if you want this to be like a harder on, you can do that. So that's really something we encourage. Like take a simple, like now you have these demo files here, take a simple file like this and really study these generators. So once you start working in Dylos, you really want to, you want to have quick access to these things and understand these. And this is continuously improving. Like the last, like this is actually just like 1 or 2 versions old now that we added this. So we've been continuously making these, enhancing these features. And this is not video. This is like really your graphics card generating this. You can affect if this is oval this way, if it's a true circle, or if it's an oval this way. So even that alone will help you change the look of this effect. So it's just some few, just with a few values. So if you look in the programmer, this is all there is. There's just these few values here, and this creates this effect. Anything that you create in Dylos, you can store as a preset as well. So I made this. I have all these items here in my programmer. In this case, it's a lot of different things. You use zone control, source control. Maybe helpful to make a preset out of this. So I could actually capture everything if I wanted to, record this into, in this case, you want to make sure you activate all these parameters. So it's like a full preset of all different things. And I put this into beam effects, and I call it center out. And then I modify this. So I like this one, maybe a little faster. Now record that as my second effect, or preset. So let me carefully get the terminology right. Center out 2. And since this is so much exactly the same as programming any other parameter in the console, these presets work as true presets. So if you edit them, you put them in a queue, they'll be referenced properly. Yeah, very straightforward. So now this generator is going. I can also recolor it with the presets, palettes, that we brought in. Lots of terms. So I'm still here on source. I got a palette. I'll try this one. Or maybe this one's nice. Now I can work with repetition a little bit. So this is, I can't think of a simpler way to create such impressive color effects. Like for instance, here when you use palettes, you can also reduce the amount of colors that I use, so it doesn't all start looking like a Christmas tree. So I can say I only want a maximum of 5 colors out of this. But then it's harsher. The higher you go in colors, it may smoothen out because then all these crossfades look better to you. Yeah. So lots of fun with this. As you can see, it goes all crazy. And since it's generated content, it is very, very smooth. To slow it down, you can change the direction of this. So yeah, lots. I'll try some of the factory presets. Yeah. So another way to just simply do a rainbow chase, and don't forget you have all the different kind of curves as well that influence it. So if I'm on the generator, just changing the curve. And now if I like this one, I just go back to, I'll try, I don't like this one. Maybe I like this one. Okay, so now I can do it instead of circles, I can use squares. And again, I have different controls here to work with. I can decide this how square I want it. Then basically, if I turn the square off, it becomes a line animation. I can decide how often I want this. So if you just want like smooth fades like this with a little bit of a center out, you can do this. And if you want the fades to be hard, then you go to 5 colors or 6 colors. And then they snap. That fading that you see would be because capture is trying to be accurate. That is a CMY system. It would be LEDs that would be snapping on without delay. So yeah, lots of ways to manipulate this. I'm gonna go back to default here. So that's a matrix ellipse, and a matrix line generator. Yeah, in this case, you saw it had no black spots and parts in there. Simply bring the fill ratio up. And that way the effect is across the whole thing. But this is now colored by these palettes again. So I go to the palette I just imported these. Here's my water going across. Interesting ways to create something, and then you can turn it off. Let's look at the other generators that are there. There's one called Bouncing Ball. And here you have also interesting effects. You have a glow you can turn on and off. You change the radius of the ball. And you can say how many you want. And this will just sort of randomly placed there. It's an interesting way to create, chases and effects like this. Especially turn the glow off. I mean, it's really quite interesting. And good way to get very sort of like, let's say, organic looking effects. And again, you can simply recolor the effect. Or use the palette feature to color it. next generator, there is a animated line like this. And when you see new generators come up, just bring them up and experiment with it and see how you can utilize it, what it does. Really, what we really try to do here is encourage people to experiment rather than thinking of, I need 20 of this and this offset and this swing. We wanted to create a system that encourages creativity. Yeah, all of these you can always recolor easily. Actually, some of these have a animation slider. Where is it? Yes. See, some of these I don't even know yet where to. And then Christian, remind me on this one. Did that have an animation one on this one?
It's on the Gobo second page.
Second page. Animation, target, playback speed, no?
And then you have to choose an animation target,
yeah.
both parallel or...
Okay, so that's interesting.
And that works very well with the swing.
Oh, I see. So that's okay. Yeah. Amoeba. Yeah, and then again, can always recolor it quickly. Yeah. The last one in here is beta balls. Let's turn the color off so we can see it. So everything we've been playing with here is like built-in generators, all in here. Same different ones here. Then there's some pattern generators. Let's call it like a plasma / lava lamp looking one. The difference here is that it's actually really generated. It's not a video going through. So this will look, it's like a random thing and you have control. Sometimes you don't have a lot of controls. It kind of depends how these are written. You can turn off how many colors you want to go through here. So this is interesting. You can add some contrast to this effect by simply increasing the border size. Everything is pretty in rainbow. There you go. And then nature one now, it's fun too. So there's also some very basic ones like a fire effect here. Fire. Sometimes it's helpful to just clear out your stuff. Just to make sure you have, there you go, it says your fire playing, it's black and white by default. You can utilize a palette to color that. Here's one that I brought in. So it's called fire, but you can actually use it to basically animate with different colors. The steam plugin, fire, so they all have sort of similar controls. The most basic one is actually gradient, so I probably should look at that. So a gradient gives you this pattern here. You have control over a couple of the settings, and there's an animation speed for this as well. So you can say, I want to scroll this gradient. Now it's like fading over the picture. You can control these curves here. So you have control over that. And there's a really nice preview that the team added, so you can really see what this looks like. So if you don't want to curve, but somewhat fanning, so you can like sort of, that's really what I try to do, encourage people to play rather than just looking at numbers. And you could colorize this. So at any time, by the way, I've been going to these palettes, but you can always simply go to the color picker here and bring in a color. Or use any of the pre-made ones. Same color picker that you have in the console. So you don't always have to go to these palettes, but it's just a quick way to really see what this does. So interesting way to do like chases like this. So many different ways to spin a rainbow palette. Quite amazing. So if we go back to the, if we take the color out of this. So we'll take this out. What you saw when I put this and animate this here, there's a part that is actually black. And this is actually transparent. And at this point, I can see the fixtures color. So if I clear this out, I'll take these lights as group 1. And they're coming out of the queue in a specific color. So let's say let's color them all magenta. And I record that into, make a new fader here. So the lights play back in magenta here. So second cue, the lights, all the fixtures point here at Tony and they're magenta. Now I'll bring my zone back up, pick out my color here. And what you see, there's an opacity here that's off by default here. And if I click on this guy here, the opacity control of the zone will allow the fixtures to shine through here. So the fixtures down here will be magenta, and the higher up it goes, the more Dylos will have effect over this. So down here where it's clear, the fixtures will play back whatever's in the queue. Here they play back what you tell it to do in Dylos. So this is quite interesting when you animate it, because now you can animate 2 colors over each other, for example. So if I go back here, I'll set it to scrolling. So you can see here, it scrolls through. It's white where my Dylos generator goes over it. And it's magenta when this is playing back. And once I work on this, I can actually just do something. I can make this narrow. So it's just one fixture going through. Let's make this really... So I just do like a thin peak like this. Now I build a chase where it's whatever color is here. and this is playing through. I'll record this here as a second cue. So that's playing. So now if I take those pictures and put something else on them, so I got my group here, R Maximus. Christian, help me here real quick. When I pick it in the programmer, it takes over, right?
Yes.
In the programmer.
Yeah, that's always above the pixel mapping. So it needs to be stored first in a queue, then Dylos can take over it again.
Right. So I may put a pan tilt, like a rainbow effect on here from ONYX itself. Quad that into the second queue to just change it. So now the fixtures are playing the effects engine here. And at the same time, Dylos is actually cross-fading over it. So this is how this interacts. So the fixture is actually, as long as, let's see, it's here. So the fixture is playing the effect that's programmed in the queue until that little white blip goes over it. So there's another way to overlap, for instance, the Dylos effect with that. And that's how these generators work here. Clear this guy out. Right click. Sorry, I'll do it here. You go out. We're going back to the first one here. Another couple of things you can do is, so I'll put a simple media file back on. This guy, very basic. You have some effects, not these effects here, but we'll call effect here. For instance, you have some circle or mirror effects you can do to, so I bring up this effect here. Yeah. I can take this now and often the content is repeated. So I have a line effect, for example. It tries with a different piece of content. Try this.
It works better with horizontal content.
Does it? There you go.
Mhm.
Thank you. Right. So there you go. I can bend this. So it'll be like this. And then there's. Didn't you put an animation on that too, Christian? On the,
Yes, also in Gobo, second page.
but you have to be in the, that is animation index. Okay. But where do you continue this?
Underneath.
So I can change this up here to an index and speed control. There you go. So same thing. I'm taking this really boring image. I bend it over there. And I'm making this interesting effect out of this. If it's too colorful, you can just start modifying this. And you have different kind of effects here. You got this line effect, you got a mirroring going on here. These are actually new. There's a new mirror that we just added. Way better to clear that out first. So there's a mirror effect. What's a good content to show that with, Christian?
In red, there's a good one.
Which one?
The first.
Oh yeah, there you go. Thank you. I'll go back to effect, and you have these little mirror controls here. Let's see if I can power it. If it's too busy, it gets tough to see what it actually does. What does the first one do? Mirror one?
So it's basically two mirror lines on top of each other. And you can also rotate them in Gobo or on the effect page.
There's the angle. Wow, look at all that. Okay, so yeah, don't get boring anytime soon. I'll do the color image like this. And that has an animation as well. Does it have an animation on it?
Yeah, everything in Gobo you can also animate, like the angle you can continuously turn on.
There you go. But it, oh yeah, mirror. Yeah, I guess the image has to move to really animate it through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so ignore that, but you can get the idea here, what's possible with that. I know a lot of questions are coming in, so I'm gonna go through those in a second. Bear with me here while we'll continue through this forest of effects. So you got tunnel, mirror, these are all fairly new. There's some tiling you can do. So you can tile this. You may have seen this in different media servers as well. So you get something like this here. So far, all we've animated was color, actually. So we've been really just looking at the CMY system of these fixtures. So let's have a look, actually, how we can animate something different, like intensity or any other parameter. So we'll start with just looking at intensity map. So you actually see what's happening here is that the fixtures they go to what's called a CMY black, which is some sort of ugly dark green coming out. That's not very desirable. So if I put in a white chase, so this is actually, at this moment, it would be using the CMY filters to go to black. If I go to mapping, here, I have a couple of different options here. One of them is called dynamic intensity. And what that does, it's really brilliant. It takes the desired, like it basically looks how black the fixture gets and automatically starts modulating the intensity control of the fixture. So if you have a discharge fixture or an LED fixture with a CMY system, you really want to utilize dynamic intensity because you see now it doesn't have this funny dark green anymore. Yeah, and the white's actually then much purer. I can also just map intensity. So there's a difference here because if I just do intensity, then the color would simply come from the fixture as it is. So if I run this queue where we made them magenta previously, I'm still just animating the intensity. So in this case, I only do intensity mapping. If it's a black and white image, it's pretty easy to understand, but even if you use color, it actually internally maps it as a grayscale. So if I have it basically remaps, and you can actually see this here. It creates a grayscale image when I do this intensity mapping. So the color for the fixtures right now comes out of your regular queue, and just the intensity is animated. So that's an easy way to create an intensity chase. If I turn that off, go to mapping here, go back to CMY mapping, you get this. And then when I do a dynamic intensity, then I also get some, make sure that the fixtures go black properly. The other map I can do is use presets. And this is where this is going to start to get really interesting. So first I want to turn dynamic intensity on, fixtures are off. Let's try to use a 2 preset one. So I actually made a couple of presets that are in your queue, in your show file, sorry, down, up, 45 degrees, and lighten up Tony here. Let's pick a source. Should do that first. So I don't actually have to go up here. The idea of this down here is that you can navigate back and forth without even have to worry about this. So I'll pick a simple monochrome movement. Let's see. Oh, that was not simple. Which was a good one to use? This guy. So this is just like a slow movement here. I'll make this very slow. Then I go to my mapping slot here, and I do a 2 preset map. The first one is when the fixture is, where do I want it when the video is black or the generator is black? Where do I want it when it's white? And you can modulate between these 2 positions. So on preset A, it's black, I want to go to down. And preset B, where it's white, I want to go to 45 degrees. Or maybe I go to up so you can really see this. Okay. So now this modulates around black, the fixture point down, white, the fixture point, in this case, up, because that's the up preset I used. So if I hide this guy, so it's on the side, you can really see how it's a really nice way to create this like very organic looking random chase effect, movement effect. Try to replicate that on you. So we're going to do this again together one more time. So we clear this out. We run this queue here, or the first one here is also okay, where the fixtures are white. You want to turn on your zone. You want to pick your source. In this case, we used monochrome video slot 28. What's this? By default, it will just map intensity here. Then we went down here to mapping. We went to 2 preset mapping. So you have a dark preset and a light preset. Black preset, we did down. White preset, we do up. And that should be the result you're seeing here. Probably have to make it a little bit slower. There you go. Let's see if everybody has been able to do that. Maybe just put a quick note in the chat that you were able to get this done. So this preset can be anything. So let me store this, and then we'll adjust the preset so you can actually see that you have more than just, for instance, just pan tilt in there. So I record this here as my what I wanted. I'll just put it here on the new queue list. And what I'm going to do is going to take my fixtures, which is all the Maximus. And what I want is when they go to a certain position, I also want them to zoom down. So center, was it the up position? We'll also make them narrow. So I record that into up as well. I have to make sure that I merge that in there. Beam, up, merge. So you want to have this in here. Pan, tilt, and beam. And now the fixtures are going to go narrow every time they fade up. So the higher they go, the more they're going to go narrow. So this is now, color comes from the Q. The down and up position come from Dylos. And the up position contains a narrow zoom as well. So as the fixtures fade, you can also see that they go narrow as they go up there. So let's see how we can modify this. So I'll go back to my Dylos view, because now I can work with different source. For instance, okay, this looks great. What if I use a generator? That's actually where these generators become really powerful. So I can use this generator here. You see, that's probably a bit steep for my fixtures to slap down like this. So let's modify this. So it's still 2 presets, up and down, and a generator going over there like this. So you just need to adjust a little bit the options you have here. So you get your speed, you get your repetition. So you want this maybe twice to go through. Maybe you like it smoother. So the curve that you're using, you may want to adjust this a bit. So now this is going through, it brings the fixtures up. They go narrow, they fade back down, and they turn off. So very, very simple way to create an effect like this. You double that up, now you're gonna have this twice going through here. And higher I make the fill ratio, so this fill ratio helps you to keep this like very like small and focused just to a specific row. The higher you dial this up, the smoother this goes. So if you go all the way up on your fill ratio, you end up with this really, really nice can-can chase. If you make this repetition really long, you get this kind of chase. So you see how this becomes like a really, really powerful effects engine. And this is why we don't want to call it a pixel mapper, because it's really a composer. You really create, adjust, try out things. I think, Christian, if I'm right, I can put a mirror on this right now, right? To make this go inside out.
Yes.
So would it be tile or mirror? Which one would be the better one here?
Mirror is better.
Where do you put it? Deformation. This one? Mirror tile?
The last one. And then you have to turn it 90 degrees.
These are new, actually, so I'm still, I have to admit,
Gobo.
I'm still learning these two, and I have to be here. So I turn them in Gobo.
Mm-hmm. It's mirror one, 90 degrees.
There you go. Now this is a mirrored effect from the center out. Or if I go 180, it will go inside out. Yeah. So it's just a very different way of looking at it. You don't think in the actual fixture, what do I want it to do? You need to look at it a bit more wholesome. It's like, how can I create something over this whole package of lights? Now, just if you work in Photoshop, you don't take every pixel manually and adjust it to create a smear effect or soften the edges of something. You take a tool and you work on an area. You pick the right tool. Do I need it hard? Do I need it soft? How big my area wants to be? And you have to look at Dylos in a similar way. You know, you really have to see this as a draft. Like you really start to paint over these fixtures, if that makes sense. So now they're doing this. Now I can add some color over it, of course. Or I can recolor it if I like to, because I'm having my color coming in, remember, from the main cue list, it's magenta. So if I recolor the source now, I should be able, what am I missing here, Christian? Oh, I'm in black and white. Oh, that doesn't work when I'm doing two presets,
No,
right?
but
So
you could use the second zone to do the color mapping.
yes. So at the moment, you can do only one of those maps at a time. As this expands, and eventually we're going to add layers to that, and then you could reuse the same content in multiple layers and do a color map at the same time. So sorry about that. In this case, if you want two different colors, you have to make them part of your preset. But you see, actually, the color effect, it's because the color changes how steep this white is. So adjusting the color just made the shades look different. It's kind of funny how that works. So let's see what kind of questions we had here. All this is going on. Could I control the intensity of a fixture that outputs white just to give a different tone? Yep. So that's we went through that. I don't know, the question's been here for a while. Sorry about that. So some of them I already answered. Yeah, so you can use just intensity mapping, which you find here. You can do intensity CMY with dynamic intensity together, as we did here, and then call up like an image with different kind of white tones, for example. So that's all possible. I have two zones on top of each other, and actually this zone would be higher than this one. Maybe in a second we're going to look at some blending ideas there. So you can actually change the order of the zones using this arrow. So if you want to flip a zone up and down, you can actually do that. So if you have zones, because you can overlay zones on top of each other, play something different in a different zone, you could actually do that. So like I'm doing this here and I want to play something with color over it at the same time. I can definitely do that. There you go. Yeah, this little sweeper here is actually kind of fun. There's also one of the newer things in ONYX that on the Dylos zones you have this like filter / cleaner here, so you can actually clear everything quickly with one click. So it just sort of defaults everything back out, and then my effect started playing. Can we import and create our own generators? That is not possible yet. I think eventually we may add abilities to create something. I'm not really sure what format that would be. We don't really know yet, Christian, do we? how we're going to do this. I really.
No, it's not yet decided.
Yeah, not decided yet. But it's the intention that you have some sort of scripting that people can do to create their own stuff. There's a beat setting on the playback speed. There is. Let's look at that. And I have to say, I'm not 100% sure how that maps. Christian, maybe you can help me.
Yeah, so you have loop and beat, and the difference is with loop, it respects the frame rate that is from the original frame rate of the video file, and with beat, it ignores the frame rate and takes care that a loop happens, for example, once per second or as you send it. So you can put it on a certain beat rate and the loop will always play back in this beat. Also the whole loop.
Map to the beat button yet, I think. Is it? No. It doesn't.
So basically, if it's a long loop file, as a long video file, then it will be played back very fast so that it loops exactly in 1 second. And if it's the short one, then it's played back slowly so that it also loops back in 1 second.
Yeah.
It plays
the
the whole
question
loop.
was, does it map to the beat button that we have on the desk? And it doesn't.
Not yet, no.
Not yet, no. Okay. So, sorry about that, but that's for now, no. Mapping for a standard effects generator would be very useful. I'm not really sure I understand that question. Maybe we can rephrase that. Mapping for standard effects generator would be helpful. I'm not really sure how that works. Does the global speed, selected Dylos speed work with Dylos? No, it's not effect speed, really. I don't know if the Dylos speed actually works on that. Christian? No. I don't think so.
No, but there is master speed and intensity, and the zone has also a master speed, so you can do all Dylos speeds that are used, get them faster or slower at the same time.
Yeah, but it doesn't map to this, so maybe eventually.
No, it's independent of that.
Maybe we need to put a Dylos master here eventually in the rates. Maybe useful to have. Is it possible to offset parameters? So I want intensity to happen right away, but delay pan tilt by half a second. This would follow the same programming logic as anything else in Desk. So if you dial the intensity up and then you want the pan tilt rotation or adjustment to happen after half a second later, then you'll literally just type that in. So it's no different than any other parameters. So you go delay, position Y, 1 second, and then in your programmer, you're going to have a 1 second delay just on that. That's kind of the beauty of this, that this, if you know how to program any other parameter, you know how to program Dylos. And it's just a matter to find out how all these different effects interact. Can I do an override with a speed attribute? Absolutely. So this is playing here. I'm just going to make this part of this queue. Oh, no. That should be a snap parameter there. That one. So if I take the speed channel here. So let's say I put this in really, really slow in the queue. I'll make an override out of this. So I can create these overrides and target any of the parameters. The override could change the offset, the override could change the steepness of the curve. Any of the parameters that exist, you can put on an override. So we only looked at 2 preset mappings, so let's look how the 1 and 3 works. So I'm going to release everything here really quick. Come on, this one. There we go. So this is actually running here on a position. So this is playing back. Let's say that is your cue. Now I just want to map 1 preset only. I'll hide this guy. Mapping 1 preset. The nice part about 1 preset is that it's based around what's currently playing. So if I pick a simple media, this guy again. So this is playing back, slow it down so it's not so fast. I go to mapping, 1 preset, up. So what it does here, it is based on our guy, and then it goes to up as this goes bright. And if I adjust something like the contrast, I make this this black harsher here. Now you see more pictures go down there. Less, the more I reduce the contrast here, and it becomes all white, and it never has a chance to actually go to the base preset. Change the preset to 45 degrees up. So now the pictures are doing all this. If I want to see this a bit clearer, often it helps to narrow them down. There you go. So actually see this a bit better. So the pictures are hitting the Tony here, and as Dylos is playing back anywhere where it's white, the pictures will go to that single preset. This may be also easy to see using a generator like this one. Now I want a wall of scanners to do this. So as it goes through, everywhere there's white, the picture will jump to that outside position, and otherwise they're parked. So the fill ratio here is again really, really helpful. And using the right curve. Again, very different way of creating effects. Christian, you may help me here real quick. The opacity effect that was possible now. Was I had to disable that here, right? Opacity to 0.
Yes.
On the zone. And then it was in the source. The generator. It's this guy here, right?
Also the best you can set it in the gradient. Then you have to have the most visual feedback.
Okay.
If you use, for example, a peak and clear the rest.
Okay, I need to animate it. So I'm picking a gradient. I'm telling it to scroll. Okay.
And clear the beam effects to have it in its default state. Then,
okay.
Like you have now under this 4 parameters where you can control also alternatively the alpha curve of the gradient. And this you can use to modulate the intensity. So if you put in the...
Didn't have to change it somewhere to the mapping to be...
yes. So the mapping, in the mapping...
Mapping, I have to go to blackout, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So if I do a blackout mapping, acid hits basically, once it's in the open area, it goes dark. And it only goes to intensity when it hits this peak.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then how do I make it move? What was it again? Because now that movement stopped.
No, and now you can set, exactly, you can set the alpha gradient and the black and white separately. So if you put the source on opaque, also put the opacity of the source up, then exactly now the gradient is done between black and white, and then you can independently set the opacity. So the opacity you can map on the intensity, like with the blackout mode, and the black-white determines the pen tilt movement that you see.
That's interesting. You can get lost. There you go. So now this is an interesting effect. So the fixture's default is point at the figure. The preset that I picked is 0.45 out, like this, where it fades out. Then we use this mapping effect called blackout. So the blackout map interacts with intensity at the same time. And then it basically, wherever this is black and transparent, the fixture will fade to black as well. And it's indicated here, which was a little blue line. Was that right? Blue you picked here? Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then you can basically adjust in the mapping how, where was this again? That wasn't the mapping, it was in the source. There you go. In the source, you can adjust, where am I here? In the generator, you have the opacity, how strong that is, and you get actually this little pattern here.
So in this way, you can define a phase between the pen tilt movement and the intensity changing.
And I can quickly change those by changing my preset. So it's very easy to change these effects. Now, of course, I can do it with two presets. So right now I do a one preset. That means the base position is used. If I do a two preset, I can have a down and an up position. So for this blackout here to happen in the top properly, which one do I have to adjust? The attack or the release? Which one would have influenced it the most?
Yeah, then you have to use the continuous curve, and then you can have the movement only in one direction.
That's already gone. So I made it, because I didn't have a good black spot in here. So yeah, if there's no good black, then you never get that. There you go. And if I want this more than once, then I use a repetition control to peak. What was repetition on that one?
Yeah, on this one, it doesn't. Then you have to use one of the matrix effects.
Okay.
In the 2D shapes, they have repetition or a tiling effect on effect one.
A tiling effect? Okay. There's different ways to achieve the same thing here, yeah, for sure. There you go. Yeah, interesting. Or just use a different one altogether, which is matrix, right?
Yeah, then you have
this one.
Better continuous moving.
Well, it's all blue.
Maybe clear the effect.
There you go. Sorry. There you go. Okay. Yeah. So here's the effect going through too fast. So I'll make this smoother. Fun stuff. Like you really have to spend some time to understand how this all interacts. For sure. This one, yeah. But yeah, it's a very different way of working, thinking about this graphically rather than. Where's the scroll option? The scroll is, if you hear Gobo, that's animation speed and the generator. Normally it's animation speed. The scroll was on.
Scroll is only on gradients.
Yeah, and that's here. Go second page of Gobo scrolling. Lastly, let's look at some color effects with presets. So I'm going to build 3 color presets here. So you take all your Maximus. We're going to mix some colors here. So we're going to have a Congo. Record this as color 1. Maybe record color 1. Then we're going to make red, color 2, and a nice yellow. Okay, so it's like 3 colors here. Congo, red, click, yellow. Back to Dylos, looking at the first zone. We'll put a basic generator on again. And then we're going to use 3 mapping, 3 presets. I'm going to color, preset A, which is where it's white, black, sorry, it's going to be Congo. Preset B, where it's white, we're going to do red. And preset C, where it's basically in between the gray, we'll do yellow. And then you can actually control how much that gray actually works. So if you're in mapping, where was that gray level again? Go on the mapping slot up here. You can control. What was that again?
It's in Gobo or it's underneath presets.
Oh, it's here too. So, yes. So you can actually control how much of that gray level you want to use. So it kind of depends on the
Matthias,
yeah.
Speak into your microphone, Matthias. It's hard to.
What? That's right next to me. Did it change? Hold on.
No, you kind of trail off towards the end sometimes.
I trail off because I'm looking at my computer. Sorry. No. So let's try a different effect. Generator. So try this one. Should probably, this is easy to understand. We do like a single one. So as this fades through, so where it's black, it's going to be blue. Where it's white, it's going to go towards red, and anywhere in between, it'll be the whatever gray level you use. So it's important to understand on the three-way presets that this third slider is important here. And you can also find it here on the was it mapping. Because that influences how much that interacts with each other. So I'll speed that back up. Still mapping generator. So then by changing the curve, like we use this exponential one, I can make just a very narrow line go through. I can widen this up and you can see how this goes. Anytime I can change direction, I can also decide how many colors I want. So if I only do 2 or 3 colors, it's going to be really harsh in between. Whereas the higher I go on this here, the smoother it goes. So when you do 3 colors, then I get exactly the 3 colors that are programmed. And depending how often I repeat this here, you get these little sweeps that come through. So really interesting stuff to It's all just 3 presets, and there's just so many different options here in Dylos to interact with that. And then because you can overlay effects on this, you can mirror on tile, and like all these different other things. So let's see what other questions coming up. We're not getting the opacity thing, so I'll rebuild that one in a second. Can you have multiple presets in each mapping? No, you would have to create presets that contain multiple items. You can make embedded presets. So if you want something that is hit the guy, be zoomed down, and be yellow, then build it on embedded presets and point Dylos onto the embedded preset. That way you can basically combine 3 presets into one mapping position. But by design, you only have 3 presets, 2 or 1 preset, because it's the way it interacts this video. This was like a best way to do this. Because keep in mind, this is all video based. So all our interaction with parameters is based basically on the brightness levels that you see on the stage, on this video here. And then there's just a lot of magic around it to interact with it and then create movement and create intensity or create color mapping. Being able to link to, can you, so I answered that. So I'm just going to make sure we're not getting too lost here on questions. How do I make that color effect ping pong? You would look at the Christian, what was it here? Is there a bounce on these generators?
No, on this not. There are generators that have a continuous movement. That's enabling, for example, this long sweeps, but they have not all the different playback options. And there are ones that are more loop-based, and they have the different options. That's, for example, the gradient. This could have a bounce.
Okay. Is this going to get extended eventually? That we add some?
Yeah, it's a principal decision. Some of the generators have the loop-based things and some not. I mean, it's because of the nature of how they are working. Some features are not possible in both ways. So for example, the ping pong would be possible with a peak or the continuous. And it would be possible in a tile effect afterwards. So you could put a tile effect and animate this one to have also the same effect. And
in that case, I want to rotate it too. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. That's possible. Can you reread the mirroring again? Yeah, we're going to do this with a simple example. So the mirroring is an effect. So you would go to effect. Informations, mirror. So in this case, you have this guy. Gotta make sure I'm working on the right one.
You have also shortcuts in the underneath.
So what would be a good one to use for a mirror one? That one. You can see it. Don't worry so much about that. It's just more to understand the principle. So you got effect. You got a mirror controls here. And then you can rotate them. Oh, is it here or two? Rotation? Yeah. So you can actually click on this little guy here and rotate this. You can continuously rotate it like this, forward and backward. It's like Pac-Man going through here. Yeah.
So it's basically the X and Y position is moving the dot that you see on the thumbnail, and rotation is then changing the angle of the mirror line itself.
Interesting stuff. There you go. This works really good. Is mirroring things with colors. Yeah. Okay. Wow, we're already 3 hours in here. So let's see if, did I forget anything? I think blending I didn't do, Christian. Maybe I should show that really quick, how to add a mask and blend it together. So we'll pick an image, something that has black and white in it, like this, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Which one did we do earlier? This one, right?
Yeah.
Then we blend that one together.
So you want the mask, so it's the mask.
Yeah. So mask is one way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had, what was the crossfade one again? That was a blending mode on the...
Yeah, so the zone itself has only limited mask possibilities. So on the effects, you have more possibilities. So if you do mask on the top, you can choose on which slot to apply it, effect 1, effect 2, or zone.
Yeah.
if you choose now effect 1 and choose a media for it.
Okay. Yeah,
So, and by default, it's using a black key. So every pixel that is perfectly black will be transparent, and the rest of the pixel will take the color of the canvas. And under beam effects, you have several options to change this behavior, similar to what you have in After Effects or Photoshop.
Yeah. Inverse that.
You
You
can use
fade.
multiply is good if you want to combine the two images with the colors. Crossfade is a kind of layering.
Yeah.
And then you have different keying versions to choose a color that you want to key out, or use white or black as a color you want to get transparent.
Yeah, so on these black and white ones, that works pretty. What's the wrong one? Gotta be sure to be in the right mask here. Is this black level not correct? What am I missing here?
Yeah, some of these images have no perfect black. This one, for example, has dark grays in the dark areas. So there you have to adjust the black level in order to have the keying working.
Right, so this is how you do the different blending things. And the zones to each other, maybe explain quickly how they blend.
So if these mappings of the different zones apply to different channels, for example, you do in one zone pan tilt mapping and preset mapping and the other color mapping, then they just work on top of each other. If they apply to the same channels, for example, both color mapping, then transparency is used to decide which pixel gets through. And the higher the zone is up in the view, the more priority it gets.
Okay, so I got two things going here, and I can control. I can use the intensity, and then there's a transparency in the zone, right? So opacity or
No, so the master is of course like a transparency, or you can use a mask, or you use media that has transparency, or generators that have transparency.
Correct. Nice. Yeah, forgot about that. Okay. So was that anything else we didn't cover? No. Palettes, mapping, looked at all that. The different effect types. Looked at importing content, control.
One thing in mapping is that there's also gamma control in order to adjust the behavior of coloring from the lamps a little bit more too.
Okay, where is that in mapping? Oh, yeah, this is. So
yes, and one of the pages, there's gamma, the lowest one. So the white one is overall intensity, and then you can also adjust for each color subchannel independently to adjust a little bit the behavior of the lamps. If you have, for example, LED fixtures that behave very unlinear, then it's possible to adjust it a little bit.
Okay, so also if like a color is too dominant, they can help with this here then, I guess. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. It doesn't really do much here. I guess it depends on the images as well. Okay. What's else coming in? Fallout intensity preset. Can I associate those with mapping black? Yep, you can, Brett. Just revisit this. You go and play whatever source you want. So I'm going to place a simple video here. This guy. It's just a simple one to look at. And then you go to mapping to preset. And then you configure your first one being your what you want for dark. And the second one, what you like for the bright one. There you go. So just go between these two. I hope this answered your question, Brett. Christian, was there an easy way to make this less aggressive, the preset amount? I forgot.
To use the
opacity of this? Or something?
No, in intensity. With mapping, if you use the contrast and brightness settings, this way you can control in what area they come.
Does the mapping fixture have a brightness control? No.
Yes.
It does? That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually you can really use to control the range that the mapping does, and you can also do an offset to which presets they map to. For example, if you put the brightness completely up, then you have only preset B. If you put it completely down, only preset A, and this way you can balance the effect out.
That's a good point. So it's actually nice to adjust it without having to redo the presets all the time.
Yeah.
You just sort of... Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I forgot about that. So many options. All right. I think we covered everything here. It's definitely, there is a lot of experimenting possible. And as you can see, even we get tripped up sometimes with all the different options that are in there. It's probably a good idea to build a nice a range of presets before you dive into this. So spend time and build presets that you find interesting, utilize them, and then modify it from there when you write your cues. I think it's probably, so you really have some stuff that that works for your rig or the type of fixtures you use. And yeah, with a good range of presets, I think you're going to get some really, really interesting effects out of that. I know Giancarlo keeps posting fun stuff all the time. So that really helps. And by the way, you don't have to always, there's maybe also something I should mention real quick. You do not have to use just one type of presets. So actually in all these examples, I've only been doing only pan tilde, only color. You can actually map this any way you want. So you can say, I want a color preset where it goes in the center. So there's all sorts of fun things you can do. I think best way probably to understand this is to use generators, because they're just like very determined what they do. So if I slow this down a bit. There you go. Very easy chase generator. And go back to mapping. Like black, it goes down. Gray, it goes, let's try color, red. Yeah. And then it goes to a different color in between on white. And remember, you have a control on the gray level. And then if I make the effect a little wider, that's the thing. There's like so many things that influence how this is going to look to you. Yeah, pretty fun. And then don't forget, you can always rotate something. Yeah, so in this case, I should rotate, use the gobo rotation here. That way the effect goes this way.
You know, Matthias, something that came up by a few users today was, it would be great if we had a new bucket for presets for Dylos, just a dedicated Dylos labeled preset bucket.
Okay. That is a good idea. There's actually a preset system in here that we haven't activated yet, where we're going to be able to put some pre-made stuff in here too, to make some things a little bit easier and have some pre-made things in there. All right. Yeah, that is a good idea. Actually, the preset buckets we have right now are kind of up for a review. Anyway, more generators. Yeah, we'll try to add more over time. So the idea is that we'll be able to continue to grow this. Feel free to make suggestions maybe for generators as well in the Dylos forum. When do I expect the official release? Maybe in end of this month, middle of March, somewhere in that timeline. Does it mean the original effects engine will be phased out? No, the effects engine will stay because it's part of the package to animate actually things in Dylos. So they both have their place. Yeah. I can't figure out how to record as a preset. We're actually a little bit past our time here. So I would recommend maybe the questions that we haven't gotten through to put them in the forum. There's a dedicated Dylos forum post topic category. So utilize that and we'll be able to help you there. Okay. All right. Yeah, this has been a lot of work to get here, but I hope you really see the direction we're going in here. And hopefully find this useful for your shows. Once I start again, yeah, so I think we're kind of okay here. So Bob, thanks for the help. Sorry, we ran a bit longer. We actually try to keep it shorter, but in the end, there's so much to look at. And thanks, Christian, for attending. I know it's late where you are. Many, many thanks.
Pleased to be there.
Yeah. We're going to do another one. I think when we release this officially, and we have some other things active that we're still tweaking up, and some of the controls in the bottom, and getting some enhancements still. I think we're going to do another one. And I'm actually considering maybe to do like an open webinar call with this for quite some time, because it's just going to be so new and a lot of people haven't even tried it yet. I think there's just going to be a lot of questions. So I'm going to continue to have that open. So thanks all. Sorry I ran a bit late. And thanks for attending. Really appreciate that. Goodbye to all.